Hey everybody, good to be back with you. So let's do our astrology weather forecast in the form of a walk and talk. I love walking my girls, and I tend to walk back here, 2 or 3 times a day, depending on what I've got going on. So might as well bring you with me and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So November 7th, 2025. A period that will live in infamy. It's bigger than just the day, because we have Uranus going retrograde into Taurus. And Uranus will be retrograde until, will be in Taurus, recovering that ground till April 25th of next year. So it's a period of recovering, rethinking, redoing, realignment. There's a lot of re's when something is retrograde. This is a finishing up period in terms of the themes of the breakthroughs that we've had over the last 7 years with Uranus going through that particular sign. And breakdowns, changes, and this has been values that have been all over the place in terms of tower moments. That's what Uranus brings. Tower moments, like in the tarot, where something has to fall, there's a calamity or disaster, and it makes room, it clears the foundation for something else. And this has been in the sign of belongings, and particularly what we say is mine. It's that stage of human development, Taurus, where we're developing object permanence and deciding what is worth valuing, what is preferred, physical values, material security, stuff that gives us a sense of stability, purpose, permanence. So we have a period of time where we are recovering some of our losses and preparing for the rebuilding process, because it's been a period of time here since we've had the Uranus-Pluto square a few years ago, really coming in between 2015, 2017, where that clash between progress and systems, systems of entrenchment, what seeks to subvert reparations, what we would consider the deeper forms of control, power systems. And that's that square between Uranus and Pluto. And Uranus always seeks to have us break through what seeks to break us down or enslave us or bring us back to those Plutonic depths. So we're coming into the trine years. This is the period before that. This is the last months before we come into the series of perfect trines that Uranus and Pluto will make when Uranus comes back into Gemini. And I will tell you, next July is going to be wild. I was making the astrology calendar, which I will put the link up to. I'm just about done editing it. I'll put the link up to it. You'll be able to order it. It's a calendar I designed myself that has all of the major upcoming transits on it that you'd be interested in, and I'll be talking about through the next year. Oh boy, are there a few days that will be historic in terms of the changes and the new eras that are coming in, because we do have inspiration and real progress winning against decay. And this will be an interesting time because we'll have a lot of people understanding that progress is not necessarily a sign of decay. It is something that is good in itself. It's not something that is saying something that, something else has soiled it or brought an end to it or prevented us from enjoying what, stability, structures, traditions we've put in place. There is an agreement that's coming up here. We've had that clash where it seemed to be that they couldn't be in alignment, progress and tradition. When we come into the trine years, we see that they don't have to be in conflict at all. And there is a reaching out, reaching across ideological divides that just begin to form and comes into a peak around 2076. There's some other trine years that we have coming up, which is exactly at the time that Sedna completes her extremely long 11,000 year plus orbit. That's a big part of these breakthroughs and breakdowns that lead us into the age of Aquarius. Sedna is a big part of that. The last time she was at this place is the birth of agriculture. The birth of systems of organization. That if we don't have a cooperative agreement in place, if it isn't shared abundance, if we come into ways of being where we cut off our nose to spite our face, a primary lesson that Sedna teaches us. That doesn't lead us to abundance. It doesn't lead us to wholeness. We've necessarily cut something off or severed ourselves or been severed from what we thought was going to protect us, save us. We had a cooperative agreement with. So we come into a period of combing the hair of the ages. That was the only way that Sedna could be worked with. More sacrifice. That didn't matter. Struggling, pleading, manipulating, throwing more people overboard. None of it mattered. Quality time and attention and resonance, tending, loving care. Girls, let's go this way. Combing the hair, untangling, and taking the time to perform that service. This is what we learn. This is what we do. This is what some of us have been doing. Permaculturists, indigenous teachers, those who seek to restore, those who have an understanding of a win-win when it comes to how we live, cooperate, and use resources. There's always been combers of the earth. There's always been those who serve. And things don't come as fast when you go about participating with the earth, the seasons, the biosphere. It may not come as fast, but it's sustainable. May not get rich quick, but that's not the point. So it's a 11,000 year plus era is coming to an end. At that same time, we have the Saturn-Neptune cycle, the beginning of a new dream, new inclusive institutions. Because it's happening at the 0 degree point in Aries. We almost never see that. And we have Pluto traveling through Aquarius. Long-term progress. Disruption, yes. Ooh, that's rough. But we have to clear the playing field. Clear the chessboard. And we come into a very, very different game of Risk over the next 11,000 plus years. Is less risky because we understand what we didn't understand before. We get the nature of a lot of mysteries. We didn't understand how to work with things, how to work with each other, the mechanism behind things. And now we have a lot of information. If we share it, if we're cooperative, If we understand that we have the same aim, that's where we harness the power of collective agreement. We don't see it as something that's going to extinguish us as an individual. This is the big Sedna thing. We stop cutting off our nose to spite our face and to keep ourselves in separation under the illusion of safety. And that does not mean that we lose ourselves in the blob of the collective. It's not an erasure of the individual. Because when it's a win-win, that's our value. We don't see that winning only as a function of someone else losing. The value is we all get there together. Because we understand that that's the better, gives us the better outcome. So Uranus will be conjunct Sedna again, coming up here in the spring. And that brings us also into the U.S. Uranus return at the same time. So with the myth of Sedna, it's so interesting. So it was her own father. It was her own origin. It's what made her, that betrayed her. She didn't want to get married. And she didn't want a partner. I'm not sure that there's consensus about why that was. But she refused all suitors. Till one showed up, really impressed her. And she went off with him. All kinds of happy expectations. She believed in what he was selling. And some time went by, and she found herself deposited on a cold beach. He brought her nothing but furs and scraps. She was living on breadcrumbs. It wasn't working for her. Somehow her father got the message. She was able to reach out. And he decided he was going to rescue her. He showed up in his boat, small craft. Got her into the boat. And we're making their getaway. Her horrible husband created a huge storm. The father was very surprised by this, dysregulated in that situation. And in his panic to stop the storm, he tried to appease it by throwing Sedna overboard. And she clung to the side. He asserted even more energy to save himself. severed her fingers, cut them off. So she had to let go. She sunk to the bottom. And in that sinking, in that free fall, she transformed into the sea goddess, a mermaid of sorts. And her severed fingers turned into the abundant, beautiful sea life, mammals. That in Inuit culture were full of calories, fat, abundance. Those types of mammals, abundant. Assurance of nutrition, of sustenance. I always found that interesting, that part of the myth. Our father just freaks out. He goes through all that to come and rescue her, all that energy, all that effort. And then at a moment's notice, he freaks out and decides to make a sacrifice. That was a short-term solution. To a really bad problem. And so, Sedna rules the oceans, the underneath. And when there isn't abundance, she doesn't accept sacrifice. She doesn't recognize anything other than loving care, attention, do right by her. Isn't going to be money. Isn't going to be your stuff. It's going to be your time and your attention and your loving care that has her giving back abundance, returning that. So that's where we're coming between, 2015 and 2076? I'm coming back into that connection with what gives, what we rely on, what we put our faith in. Systems, people, institutions that do what they say they're gonna do. It isn't that governing figure that, makes all the right moves until the going gets tough. And they're like, you know what? Screw you. I gotta save myself. Cuts off what depends on it, what it's raised to depend on it, because it sees it as, it's holding me back. And it's in that severing from it that father figure, that institution, that person, that idea, whatever it is, that cut off its own nose despite its face, it shrinks. It doesn't have any more input. There isn't more abundance. That panicked solution doesn't work. But the body that's cut off, the child, the brainchild, the population, the relationship, it grows into what the system that tried to get rid of it to save itself needs. That person, that system, that condition that cut its own nose off to spite its face comes crawling back because they understand, and it may take a long time. Now they have to enter into negotiation. Now you've got to enter into relationship, diplomacy, resonance, cooperative communication. 0 degrees Gemini. That's what leads to the best outcomes. And that's what we circle back to when we realize, wow, that short-term solution, that knee-jerk reaction, that moment of dysregulation, and some systems, as Sedna shows us, can last years, because it's a 11,000 plus year orbit, give or take a few years. Those labor pains, those crunch points. I always scream out and do something stupid. It always comes back around. And force will never get you back in the door. You can try to pull a War of 1812. That's a good... that's a good example. America. We have mother countries, specifically Britain, a few others. And those mother countries sought to take more and more without cooperating, without allowing a seat at the table, without allowing the kind of respect, relationship deference that an adult child or an up-and-coming child deserves. Sedna was a young woman. Still, though, under the last stages of care of her father. When America sought that representation, we were mad about representation. Taxation without representation, a few other things. And the British Empire sought the solution to that problem. Americans making a stink about how they were being treated by asserting more control, clamping down, going to war, short-term solutions. And in effect, cutting off their own nose to spite their face, because America ended up in that severance, that separation from the mother country. The Revolutionary War, which Americans think really defines all of history, but when you travel, you understand that a lot of people around the world don't even know what that was. So, some years go by, 30 years or so? Not sure, I'm not a historian. Some years. And the British show back up again. They're going to take it back. Burn down the White House, get into another conflict. I always thought the War of 1812 was hilarious. So we can have those attempts at resolution. They don't work. Until we realize, and usually after some time goes by and things ripen, we see diplomacy, agreement, and I have to expend some energy here to resonate rather than dominate. And it can lead to a new, more mature, abundant, respectful alliance. And then you will go through other cycles of separation, renewal. It's no accident. The rise of the divine feminine is happening at that same time that Sedna's comeback. The source of life, abundance, the receptive, abundant principle. And the rise of the divine feminine as the new geopolitical power in the new age. That is where we're going. And those building blocks are being put in place between the last, 10 years up until mid-2070s. Atlantis, Lemuria, those are civilizations, stories of civilizations that arose at the time we're at now, right at the conjunction of Sedna and the sun. In that first 1,000 years, very beginning of that cycle, before Sedna finds herself again isolated, the farthest reaches of the solar system, in separation, not needing anything. She didn't ask for anything. She just withheld and waited because she was fine to just keep all of her abundance and beauty to herself. It was those that wanted something from her that had to do the work, put in the effort, the energy. Again, not through sacrifice, not through violence, through ritual. Through time, attention, care, devotion, hair care. You know about hair care, don't you? Sunrise. So those are my thoughts. I guess I had more than I thought I did. Moon in Gemini today. Venus coming into a square to Pluto. So Venus and Scorpio. Whew, that's another layer here of the underneath. So Venus-Scorpio aspects, the square in particular. Ooh, the opposition. Yeah, I don't know which one is more challenging. Maybe it's not a contest. These are aspects where we are seeking the deepest connection. We just want to be consumed, merge, melt into another. And we want the security to do so. Because we want that deepest connection. But at that same time, with those hard Pluto aspects, we're afraid of it. We want it, but we know it might destroy us if we get it. And so there is that conflict. Being magnetized towards it. Being terrified of it. That's why we sabotage. We keep it at arm's length. We get it, but then we ensure that it won't leave. And because it's square, it implies short-term tactics to harder problems that actually require more wisdom, better solutions, usually than what we've currently got. That's why we're struggling. And through that struggle, we develop the wisdom, the ways. We understand the nuances of love because we want to club it over the head with the square. Even our seduction is a type of club, if we're really honest with ourselves. So it's the force of our love that can scare us and others. But if we love what's good for us, because that's a big thing with these squares between Venus and Pluto, we can choose what from the outset is not good for us. It's going to bring us the kind of intensity that will disguise what we're doing as depth and intimacy, but it's not. It's some type of emotional violence. It's intensity. And we have to come to some kind of failure through improper use of power or control. That has us losing. And that's when we have to decide, okay, am I going to force it because I love it so much? I'll cage it. Sometimes we might even try to shoot it and mount it on our wall because we love it so much. I have to look at what we're doing. Is how we're loving it killing it? Is how we're loving it making it unhappy? I once had a boyfriend when I was young. He was so controlling. I complained about it to him, and he said, but I'm only like this because I love you so much. And I said, I wish you didn't. I wish you didn't love me, because then you'd be kind to me. So those relationships where we put our thumb on something, believing that it's going to bring us what we want, it usually ends up making us feel really bad about ourselves. Especially if they have those hard aspects between Venus and Pluto in composite charts. The manipulative tactics we use to get the type of attention, connection that we want from each other. They can make us feel really, really bad and guilty about what we've done after we've done it. So something to think about while Venus is traveling through Scorpio, particularly today. And we have that difficult aspect between Venus and Pluto. Okay, guys, I think I've talked your ears off long enough. Let me know if you like this format of the daily forecast. And see you later.